Missed an episode of your favorite podcast? Choose from over a decade of content in our archives, not just the latest episode. All free at gcnlive.com.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Everyone all set, cocked, locked? Here we go. Your dial set correctly to USA Prepares. That's USAPREPARES.com. And we're delighted you're with us. We broadcast from Missouri Ozark Mountains, right here at the farm. And if you'd like to call us, we'll pay for the call. 866-582-9933. 866-582-9933. And the telephone listen line is working. And that telephone listen line is up 24/7. 605-477-3249. 605-477-3249. If you've got unlimited long distance, the call is free. Blake is engineering the broadcast in Minnesota. I'm Vincent Finelli. Ethan Indigo Smith is with us. Welcome, Ethan.
Peace on earth, Vincent. Thanks so much for having me.
I'm delighted to be with you today. Hey, Ethan, I didn't know that you had, in your earlier years, had done some really hard work, and that is baled square bales of hay. And I don't think there's too much that is more dusty, more itchy, more hot, harder, in the sun, really hard farm work than baling square bales. Is that right?
Yeah, it's all true. And you know what? On the farm, though, I have to admit, it was a lot better than shoveling manure. So I'll tell you, I look forward to going haying.
Well, that's the input side compared to the output side, yeah.
but yeah, I started off driving the old Ford and kind of making sure that I was the little guy in the rig, just driving slow and having the guys stack the hay and bring it to the barn. So I started off driving the car, and then, I hayed many summers. And it is serious work.
It really is. And class, for those of you who aren't sure what we're talking about a square bale of hay that you would feed horses, typically, sometimes cows, and, other animals. And what happens is someone cuts, on day number one, someone cuts the grass, and the grass just lies down in the sun. And then maybe if you think the weather is going to change quickly and the sun's going to not be there for a few more days, someone teds the hay or the grass that was just cut. And what that is, like an egg beater, and it scatters it in random directions, and it dries more quickly. Then a couple days later, someone comes by with a rake, a hay rake. And sometimes it's called a side delivery hay rake. So it will take the hay and rake it into a long row called a wind row. Then you're ready for the baling. Then the baler comes by and grabs that hay and compacts it into a bale and ties it with some string. And then it comes out the chute out of the back of the baler, which is powered by a tractor. Now, you can do two things. You can let those bales just fall on the ground, and then you pick them up off the ground later, that same day, or maybe the next day, but typically the same day. You pick them up, and you put them on a wagon. Then you bring the wagon to the barn. Then you take them off the wagon, and you stack them in the barn. And there's a lot of steps to it, right?
Yeah, it's I always remember, as you were alluding to, as you described there, us running away from the impending rain. So you got to get it dried, and you got to get it in the barn before it rains. Otherwise, well, I mean, if you bale hay that's not dried, you risk starting a fire. The combustion eventually can happen, and all kinds of there's all kinds of stuff you got to be wary of. But the rain being the most impending, I remember.
That's right. That's right. Because if the hay gets wet after it's baled, it can get moldy, and it's not good for the animals. And you can lose your hay crop. And if you bale it before the sun has dried it, then what happens is you can have spontaneous combustion. You know, you stack them in the barn, and next thing you know, your barn's on fire. And I'm sure you've heard of barn fires, class, you know, from years ago. So anyway, that's something that Ethan has done. It's one of the hardest jobs on the farm, and I look forward to hay season for about 10 minutes. I look forward to cutting hay. Nothing easy about it. And it causes the farm equipment to be stressed to the point where you will see lines at the farm equipment dealers because people have broken their rakes, their tethers, their gearboxes, their hydraulic hoses, their balers, the baler belts, the tractors. Everything is really stressed because of the amount of work that is placed on all of the equipment in baling hay. It's heavy, it's hard, it's hot, it's dusty, and it just stresses all the equipment. And we have a lot of failures during hay season. And it's frustrating because you're fighting the weather. You know, you're looking at the sky and you're saying, geez, I've got to have 3 days, I've got to have a 3-day window to bale the hay with no rain, but it has to be a couple days before that we've had no rain so the ground is dry, otherwise the hay will be cut on wet ground. I mean, you really need almost a week of no rain, continuous days of no rain in order to bale hay. And it's all hands on deck, and it doesn't. And well, I guess that's where the expression comes from. Make hay while the sun shines. You just can't do it any time you want. You've got to do it when the weather allows you that window of opportunity.
Right.
So I didn't know that you had been involved in farming when you were younger.
You know what? I had an interesting upbringing, and I was just thinking how along the lines of politics, and just Americana. I grew up on a farm and also in Harlem. And so I had a really kind of two sides of the coin United States upbringing where I was doing the haying in the summer, and then I was living in inner city New York and going to school there the rest of the year. So it was interesting, and in regards to Americana and politics, agriculture is the best way to grow, literally, the economy. And I think we're seeing it shift right now where now that there's this push for hemp and cannabis to be the removal of prohibition of the plants, there's a real kind of surge of agriculture again. I think it's possible anyway. And also some interesting things are taking place in California where there was the green rush, they've been calling it for a long time, but it was only so lucrative because of the prohibition costs and gray market. So now costs are going down, and so maybe instead of just growing cannabis hemp, people will start growing everything. And that's how this country was really, I mean, the expression, make America great again. Let's go back to some agriculture.
Okay, it's interesting you're saying this because I spent some time with a farmer yesterday, and he's probably a few years older than I mean, just a few. However, he looks like he's 30 years older than I am. And hard work has has taken its toll on this man. He's hunched over. He walks very slowly. His knees are worn out. And farming's tough. It really is. And I guess the reason I've been able to survive as long as I have been as a farmer is I take lots of supplements. I mean, lots of cod liver oil. I've been on cod liver oil for a very long time. But I guess the point I wanted to make is when I spent time with this man, I saw that he had some equipment that he just can't wait to get rid of. And this is equipment that's just been sitting for years and years and years. The tires are all dry rotted. I'm talking about hay baling equipment, hay raking equipment, things that use rubber tires. The rubber tires are probably 40 years old. They're absolutely, cracked and dry rotted and shot. But the point is, he is just an example, one of many who have just said, you know what, I can't do the farming anymore. I physically can't do it. And there's no one that wants that equipment. So where's it going to go? It's going to go to the scrap heap, and it's going to be melted down and turned into steel for other purposes. What I'm saying is, it's not all that hard to repair this equipment and make it usable again. Now, if you were to, and what are we talking about scrap value? Maybe $100, maybe $150 for scrap metal value if he can get his equipment to the scrap yard. However, if he were to buy a new piece of equivalent equipment, it would probably be $10,000.
Oh, yeah, at least, yeah.
Isn't that interesting? But the farmers are going away.
I'm sorry. I'm continue. Sorry.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, I find that the most arduous aspect of farming is taking care of the animals. And so if there is permaculture or agriculture that's more direct human consumption rather than this is done for the animals and then the animals are used, I find it's actually a lot less burdensome. But that's just my observation, and it's not necessarily entirely true. But the animals are a big part of the intensity.
Yeah, well, I moved our studio down to the first floor from the second floor of our farmhouse. I've got a lot of windows here, and I converted our dining room into a broadcast studio. And I have a harvest table that's 9 feet long, and I've got our equipment on it. And I can look out the window at the cows with their noses up against the window. And I'll tell you a little bit more about that when we come back. Ethan Indigo Smith is with us today. We're talking a little bit about farming and our past experiences. And I wanted to tell you, Ethan, you mentioned the farm animals. So just before the broadcast, 5 minutes before we started the broadcast, Mrs. Finelli said, okay, I've got the bottles ready. Now, these are like half-gallon bottles. And she had two of them ready. One is for Bessie, and the other is for Joe. And these are calves that were bottle feeding, and they come right next to the back door. And I go, hey, Bessie, hey, Joe. And they come running from wherever they are, and they want their bottles. 3 times a day, they want their bottles of replacement milk because their mothers died during the weather that we had that was just so brutal months ago. So Bessie and Joe are bottle calves, and they absolutely require their bottles, just like a baby would require, mother's milk or a bottle if the mother can't provide milk. But you're right. It's 24/7, and we can't leave the farm. Somebody's got to be here at all times. And the other thing that you mentioned is you mentioned the word politicians or politics. And I was thinking about these politicians, and when I'm out in the freezing cold, it's like hail or sleet or freezing snow, and I've got ice on my face, in my hair, can't see where I'm going, I've got goggles on, and I'm feeding the cows, and it's really, really cold, and I'm wet. Or in the summer when I'm baling hay and I'm soaking wet from the heat, I think about how hard those politicians are working for me. And they say things like, we're fighting for you. Right. In their air-conditioned cars, in And they've got people taking them wherever they go. Their meals are paid for, and they're fighting for me. Fat chance of that, right?
Right. And I think it's to the fact that everything is in terms of oligarchy. Like the whole agricultural system and way people get food in the world is set up to support the oligarchy. Otherwise, there would be fruit trees instead of, just aesthetic trees in public squares. Otherwise, there would be permaculture in national parks rather than energy extraction, that the government allows institutions to perform. And so everything is in terms of oligarchy and maintaining that structure. So it does really, they kind of are telling the truth. We're fighting hard, but for the oligarchy, certainly not for the individuals.
I totally agree. And it's interesting that you said that you spent time on the farm and you spent time in Harlem. Now, the farm side of the equation during your formative years was in the production of necessary food, right? And in Harlem, correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't Harlem just a collection of consumers?
Right.
At this point?
It's one of the first. Manhattan is one of the first cities to be set up as a grid, right? In the New World,
yes,
they didn't have to go with the roads that were animal trails or wagon trails and so on. So they set it up. It's a really mediated place, and you don't even realize how mediated you are because you're immersed in it. But yeah, it's certainly the most consumerist place in the world, and it's the opposite of the farm where it doesn't matter what you wear. In fact, you want to wear the least presentable clothes so that you don't destroy them. And in New York City and urban environment, you have to, even though it's more dirty than the farm, right? Urban environments, you have to be really clean cut and even expensive presentation.
It's very interesting that you're saying this, because I have some up to the minute fashion jeans, and when I say that, they have rips in them, they have holes in them, and I think that actors and actresses would be envious of my jeans, because they are, they're not ripped at the factory, they're ripped after the factory, and I think they'd be quite envious. We'll be right back. Ethan Indigo Smith is with us. Ethan, what's the best way for us to learn more about who you are?
Well, I try to make frequent posts on Facebook, and I have, my Amazon author page. My books, of course, are pretty revealing of who I am. And I share articles frequently. I got a couple of 100 articles out there over the last many years. So.
Okay. I'm looking at Amazon.com, and I'm looking at Ethan Indigo Smith as an author, and you have a Kindle version and a paperback book called The Geometry of Energy, How to Meditate. The price could not be lower. Your Kindle version is free. Is that correct?
It's $5, I think. Yeah, it's $5.
Oh, okay. Because I see Kindle 0.00.
It's probably some kind of exception if you have a certain premium account or something.
Oh, okay. Okay. So, all right. So it's $5 for your Kindle version and $15 for your paperback. And can you tell us a little bit about the geometry of energy? What would we learn by reading your book?
Well, I stumbled upon the idea through one of my other books, The Matrix of Four, where there's the four dimensions of geometry: points, lines, planes, and solids can be energetically understood as a direction for meditation, but more as a way to comprehend meditation. The point is symbolic for concentration. The line is symbolic for connection. The plane, which is normally circular, is in nature and optimally in other means, is symbolic for circulation. And the solid is symbolic for what I call unity expansion. But people have different terms for this same feeling of extraordinary connection, whether it's through meditation or some other provocative event in life or consciousness where we have this feeling of, I'm with you and you're with me, and I also am with this bumblebee or whatever. And it's this sense of unity expansion where all is in the oneness. So there's many different Buddhist, Taoist, Gnostic concepts that display this idea overtly and subtly, and I use that to demonstrate meditation comprehension and even subtle energy conceptualization as well. So it's a really profound concept that kind of mathematically or geometrically lends proof to meditation.
How often do you meditate, Ethan?
Well, daily, I would say, certainly. I practice Tai Chi daily, and that is a martial art, but it's also a meditative art. And I also will sit in the mornings and night. The time varies greatly from, a few minutes to, half an hour or more.
And Ethan, I've got to tell you, some of the smartest people I know meditate, and I'm speaking of Dr. Norman Shealy, medical doctor. He's a PhD ×3, brain surgeon, surgeon of the year. Dr. Richard Allen Miller, Matt Stein. So many of those of us on USA Prepares do meditate, and it seems to really help us focus on our projects. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. And I think for me, immediately, as a New York City kid from the 80s, I have, let's say, some anger issues. And when I can meditate, I can clear that right up. And I think for all of us, being observant humans watching the institutions of the world do their things, we might be compelled to be apathetic or angry or any number of things. And meditation, it's like clarity, right? And actually, there's Buddhist allegories or metaphors, rather, where, if you just sit still, the muddy water becomes clear, right? And it's very much like that, I think the problem with the Western mind is that we get caught up in the idea that we have to sit and not think. And that's really high-level stuff. Actually, we want to sit and observe the thoughts and let them go. Is really, so people get frustrated that they can't not think. Well, are you going to just dive into being Buddha right away? No.
And you mentioned the word Gnostic. Can you share with our class? I'm sure they've heard the word agnostic, but not everybody, I don't think, has heard the word Gnostic. Can you define what Gnostic means?
For me, it's kind of like the spiritual essence of religions. Each of the monotheistic religions, which are really institutionalized presentations of spirituality, basically arguably, if not provably, to control people, right? In their center is Gnostic teachings, which teach not to worship Christ, but to be Christ. Not to just lay down to the institutionalized leader, but to go into their Father's house, the church services, and be like Jesus and say, hey, this is not right. So Gnostic teachings, examples in Islam would be some Sufism, universal Sufism, and in Buddhism, Tibetan Buddhism would be an example of Gnosticism, I think. And in Christianity, there are several Gnostic cultures and monk teachings and so forth. And in Judaism, the most famous are the Kabbalists, right? And to that being that there's all these secrets within the Gnostic teachings, there's the good and the bad, or at least the decent and the bad. Whenever there's secrets, I think there tends to be corruption, right? Whether it's governmental or spiritual.
And so is the term God is everywhere, is that a belief of Gnostics?
You know, I think this is alludes to or is parallel with the biggest question of man. And I think one of the big confusion factors that we are all living with the results of. And I like to say there is no one in the oneness, right? And there's the confusion of monotheism as opposed to Gnosticism, in my opinion. Whereas as soon as there is the one God and the one way to perceive God, then there's one and everybody else. So there's actually two. Mm-hmm. When there's the oneness, it just is, right? Then everything becomes acceptable and even promotable. And so I think there's the divergence. If we look at the oneness or if we look at the one, because there is no one in the oneness.
Have you heard the name of a person, Father Guido Sarducci?
Yes, that rings a bell.
Okay, Father Guido Sarducci is a fictional character by a comedian whose name is Don Novello. And he would wear a fedora, and I think he bought his attire at a thrift shop, and so he was on Johnny Carson, and he said God is everywhere, and and that's why I brought that up, because he was a terrific comedian who portrayed being a priest, and that one line stuck with me, that God is everywhere, because of the way he said it, and that's why I mentioned that. Okay, and class, if you want to find some great humor on YouTube, you can find Don Novello, and he has he's got a YouTube video. It's just a few minutes long, and I believe he calls it the 5-minute. It's Father Guido Sarducci's 5-minute university. Have you seen that?
I haven't, no.
Okay, so what he says is he's going to teach you everything that you will remember from 4 years of going to the university in 5 minutes. He's going to teach you everything that you remember. And, he's quite accurate, because really, how much do you remember of what you learned at the university? About 5 minutes worth. And so if you want to see something fabulous, it's entertaining, Father Guido Sarducci, Guido Sarducci, 5-minute university on YouTube. So you've been talking about oligarchies, and you have you've written something called Guardians of the Earth Unite, American Indian Prophecy, the Medicine Wheel, and the 4 sacred directions. And in this, I think is something very, very fascinating. Would you like to share that with us when we come back?
Yeah. Which aspect?
Well, actually, all of it is pretty interesting to me. But you've written about it, and let me see if I can find some excerpts that.
One thing I like to point out is that we have to set our heart facing the right way, but also promote the right thing with our heart.
Oh. So, Ethan Indigo Smith, you talk about the medicine wheel prophecy, the polarity of institutions versus individuals. And you say at the beginning of this cycle of time, long ago, the Great Spirit made an appearance and gathered the peoples of the earth together and said to the human beings, I'm going to send you to 4 directions. And over time, I'm going to change you to 4 colors. I'm going to give you some teachings, and you will call these the original teachings. When you come back together with each other, you will share these so that you can live and have peace on earth, and great civilization will come about. And then you say that to the Indian people, the red people, he gave the guardianship of the earth. To the south, he gave the yellow race, the people, the guardianship of the wind. To the west, he gave the black people the guardianship of water. And to the north, he gave the white people the guardianship of fire. Right?
And this is the Hopi creation story. And all the American Indians also talk about the two-hearted people. And essentially how one can perceive that is when one is acting on behalf of an institution, like a person, they don't want to even be called John anymore. They're like, no, I'm senior executive of Plastico right now. I'm not John. And so they actually take on the heart of an institution that, according to Hopi understanding, American Indian understanding, even beyond that, that is endlessly hungry. There's no end to its hunger. And we see that with the institutions today. And in regards to the 4 directions, which can be taken so many places, and that's why I wrote the Matrix of 4. But the institutions lie. They're just phony. And they, I call it the arithmetic of lies. They use the addition of information and the subtraction of information, and they multiply erroneous information and divide connecting points. And this is how lies are done in mathematical terms. And individuals have 4 options to really take on this information in a paradox too, right? Of this 4, we can say, is this so? Is this not so? Is it both, or is it neither? And that is a complete formula of questioning the system or the situation. And David Icke is really famous for bringing about the understanding of the Hegelian dialectic of thesis, antithesis, excuse my lisp, and synthesis, right? And so this is kind of the modality that institutions present their lie and then their preconceived construct. And the 4th aspect, the hidden aspect, most often by institutions, is what I call nullisis. No, none of that, right? And so they kind of present choices in terms, actually, Republican and Democrat is a classic way to just look at it. And then they kind of come up with this synthesis of their Republican con and Democratic BS, and it just doesn't work for anyone but their flagship, you know. And so sometimes nullisis is the best thing we can say, is just no. And not in the negative, but no, we're going to do something more positive and outside the box.
Very fascinating what you said. As you were describing this, I was leaning back in my chair at the studio, and I wrote this down. None of what we have discussed today, Ethan, Indigo, Smith, and I, none of it is taught in public schools from grade kindergarten through grade 12. It's hardly taught at the university level. Ethan, would you agree with that?
Yeah, and I tried to design all my writing to inspire consciousness because all of that is eliminated and or belittled in schools.
Ethan, Indigo, Smith, thank you so much for being with us, class. More information about Ethan on the website usaprepares.com on the Instructors tab. Ethan, thanks so much for being with us today.
Thanks so much, Vincent. An honor, as always.
And Ethan, you raise the bar every time you're on the air. Thank you again. Everyone all set, cocked, locked. Here we go. Hour number 2 of USA Prepares. Stephen Heuer's with us. SGN80.com. SGN80.com. Synergistic Nutrition. Welcome, Stephen Heuer.
Good morning, Vincent Finelli. How are you doing?
I got to tell you, I am doing better every day, and I owe so much to you. Class,
well, I'm always honored.
No exaggeration.
Nature's laws always operate better than ignoring them. So, I've learned through the School of Hard Knocks that there's only one road to getting well, and that's all things natural.
Yes. And, Stephen, it's interesting you say that because on our farm, I see that our farm is operated differently. We raise black Angus cows, and we've got a few red ones, but they're all Angus, red Angus and black Angus, most black. But what we do is we try really hard to stay natural in every respect, and our cows look great. Other farmers inject their cows with all kinds of chemicals, feed them all kinds of chemicals, spray all kinds of chemicals on their fields, fertilize with commercial fertilizer. And what we do is we use the cow manure, the cow urine, and every 5 years or so we apply lime, natural lime.
What about trace minerals? Do you put those down?
Oh, yes, we do. Yes, we do.
Good.
And it's working. And it absolutely works. So that's our plan, and it's the plan for the long run, not the short run. The short run is you grain the cows, you pump them up, and they look really good for a short time. Ours are in it for the long run, and it's working for us. So that's what you're saying, I believe, for humans, correct?
Yeah. The animal example is a good example. There's various doctors that I've read their research from William Albrick, who was a famous soil scientist, to Dr. Kerry Reams, another famous soil scientist, and they sort of laid the foundation for human health by defining the parameters of what creates soil fertility. And there was one case history I read where one farmer was working with this one trace mineral product called azomite that you get from Utah. Azomite's really unique stuff because it's a combination of sea minerals and volcanic minerals. And so it's got this full spectrum. It's paramagnetic. And anyways, one of his cows made it into the barn where a broken bag was open and was daily going in and licking the mineral dust and just eating it daily. And that was the only cow of his herd that did that. And when he slaughtered all the animals, he said this was the healthiest one he had. It had no liver flukes, and it was the healthiest.
Now, azomite, are we talking about, is this a clay?
It's not a clay. It's a full spectrum trace mineral. I think it's got 72 elements or 76 elements, and they're in these very small amounts, like trace amounts. But there's a minerals operate together, and so when they're in the right ratios together, there's a better effect. And paramagnetism is a property where when that mineral comes in contact with the magnetic field, then it amplifies the magnetic field. So that's one property of how plants grow is magnetism. So you're improving the plant's magnetic field and ability to grow from that, plus the trace minerals are just involved in multiple different enzyme systems of the DNA code. So for humans and for animals, it's phenomenal stuff. So I put it on the ground for my plants, and they always do 10 times better. There's one experiment that was done where he put trace minerals down, like this azomite, just growing a little plot of wheat and another plot without it, and it was like there's a 200% increase in yield, you know.
Okay, I think I've heard about this maybe 20 years ago, and there was a guy who took azomite, I believe this is it, and he applied it to fields, turned the soil, planted grass, pressed the grass, and drank the liquid from the grass pressings, and found it to be really beneficial. Is that what we're talking about?
Yeah, that's wheatgrass. That's wheatgrass juice. But yeah, it comes out of Utah. You can buy it by the bag, and it's just one of the best fertilizers you can use. Plus, you also can give it to animals as a supplement, and they'll be healthier.
That sounds great. I'm going to look into doing that for our cattle. And I wanted to thank you specifically about the colostrum. And I mentioned the last time we were on the air together that I think it's the fountain of youth. It really helps with brain focus. I have developed a way longer list of things I want to get done, like right now, than I can do. I mean, I wake up in the morning and I'm all excited about all these things I want to do, and I'm doing things that I have never thought that I would want to do. I mean, literally, I'm looking at broken farm equipment that is available at very low prices because nobody wants it, and all I have to do is fabricate replacement metal that has been rusted away, fabricate braces, bearings, turn bearings on a lathe. I mean, this is a lot of work, and I'm all excited about doing it. The last thing I needed was more projects, but I'm attributing this new found youth that I have. It's like I'm 30 years younger, like I used to be 30 years ago.
Wow. Yeah, that's awesome. Well, colostrum has got all those properties, the immunological properties, so it'll knock out a lot of pathogens, so your immune system doesn't have to work as hard. Plus, it's got the growth factor IGF-1 in it, so it facilitates healing of the intestinal tract and healing of other body parts, like healing of the joints and whatever. So, I mean, it's wonderful that you've gotten that youthening effect, and let's take it as far as we can and get you back to being 25.
Yeah. Well, so class, if you're interested in what I'm talking about, this is not a commercial. This is an endorsement. This is, Vinny being almost down for the count to Vinny being way better. I mean, I'm doing things that I didn't think I could ever do again. And so I'm taking, Stephen, here's what I'm doing. I'm taking 1 heaping teaspoon 3 times a day in water, nothing else. So for breakfast, before the broadcast, I used to have oatmeal or something like that. Nope. Now I take 1 teaspoon of colostrum in water, drink it down, and that is all that I'm going to have until lunchtime, at which time I'm going to have a salad. Is that?
That's fantastic. And just to point out, the repetitive taking of it every single day, 3 times a day like this, there's been this cumulative effect. So it didn't occur on day 1 or week 1, but, multiple days, multiple weeks, you've got these cumulative results. And it's just a testament that when you stick to something, whatever supplement program or dietary program, it's the cumulative effects that you're looking for, and you have to be on it a while. So that's good to hear.
Mm-hmm. So, class, if you're interested in doing what I do, you can contact Stephen Heuer's company at sgn80.com, and you can buy it as well. And, Stephen, would you like to give out your phone number for your team to help our class?
It's a toll-free number. It's 888, so 888-988-3325. 888-988-3325. We're 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, Eastern Time. If you don't call us in that time window, just leave a voicemail and we'll call you back.
Yep. And seriously, class, this is not a commercial. This is an endorsement. And, Stephen, I wanted to share this with you. We have a dear friend who's a broadcaster, and his wife is suffering from cancer. Is there hope that that colostrum could help her? Yes,
but we did have one show on that, you and I, back many months ago, and I consider myself a master of that topic because I had cancer, breast and prostate, 3 times over the course of a year, and by the third time I got rid of it 3 times, and the third time I figured out how to get rid of it permanently. And, you can be eating super healthy diet, have a good pH, be totally clean, but have a weak immune system, and then the naturally occurring cancer cells can take off, which is what I was dealing with because I've had a lot of stress. So I have a report that I wrote, it's the cancer report, getting rid of it the easy way that people can, purchase on my site, $25 report, download it, and then you now have the A to Z pretty much guaranteed success formula for eradicating cancer in the body and getting totally well.
And Stephen, there's no physician who would say anything like that. So,
I know, because the physicians have never been taught to think about looking for causes, and so they've spent their entire career treating symptoms, so they don't have the actual foundational thinking to have spent, years and years looking for the cause of whatever it is, like I have. So I can say with high confidence because I understand how the body works and what it needs.
Before we get into today's topic, which is CBD oil, can you share with us, and I'm at kind of a loss for this, there's so many people whom I know are very, very sick. And I will say, we've got instructors who can help you. All you have to do is call them. So, for example, I mentioned to one that Stephen Heuer is going to be on the air with me today. Now, I don't know if he's able to call or not, but I've done this time and time again, and those calls don't come in. The calls do not come in where people say, okay, here's my symptom. What can I do that I haven't been told by the surgeon who says we can cut it off, we can cut it out, we can irradiate it, we can kill it with chemicals, and maybe you too.
Yeah.
But,
pretty high likelihood. The FDA basically says that you're cured of cancer if you live beyond 5 years or less after you've been treated with chemo, radiation, or surgery. But if it's 5 years and 1 day and you die, you're still cured in their eyes. It's just ridiculous. That's why the product called Avamar, which is the fermented wheat germ product, it's this phenomenal thing that resurrects your immune system so that your immune system can get rid of tumor cells. It has a 6-year thing, so it's a much higher standard. You use the Avamar, you do the healthy diet, you detox, and you get your pH right, your cancer goes away, and then they say if we got to wait till 6 years before we say you're cured.
I love it. And Stephen, we're finding that more and more people are having more and more cancers, including brain cancers, which I believe will be tied to cell phones. I believe that.
Yes,
I really believe that. All right, when we come back, Stephen, where are we going to go? What do you want to talk about?
I'm going to talk a little bit about a new technology that I got, and then we can dive into the CBD product technology. Very
good. Stephen Heuer, SGN80.com. You are delving into a new technology. Can you share that with us?
Yeah, so it's called the AMP coil, AMPCOIL. So for many, many years, I got an infection on my lip in 1991 that was a herpes infection from lip balm. This led to chronic fatigue and high levels of viruses, Epstein-Barr, cytomegalo, and herpes that have, plagued my life for a long time. So I've bought and used many different what's called Royal Rife frequency generators over the years, which is a technology designed to broadcast a radio wave that carries a frequency on the radio wave to vibrate the virus to death inside your body, or whatever the pathogen is. So I've owned probably 6 different units, probably used 7 or 8 over the years, and they've never been able to do it. So I was really excited to learn about this AMP coil because it's a different way of sending the frequencies into the body. The way that is being used nowadays is it's this either you're holding on to handheld cylinders and it's transmitting transdermally, which is not very effective, or it's broadcasting it through a gas-filled tube, so they're sending it through radio frequencies through the tube to your body. And the problem with that technology is that they have to comply with Federal Communication Commission's radio frequency guidelines. So you can't broadcast signals so strong that it would interfere with radio frequencies and communications. So they have to make the technology very, very weak with regards to its broadcast signal so that it doesn't interfere and it complies with the FCC regulations. So that also ends up neutering the technology so that it can't do near as much. Unlike the original Rife technology in the 30s and 40s that was very powerful and it broadcast a whole mile. And, anybody in that radius could be treated and knock out viruses in your body a mile away. So the amp coil is not broadcasting it through a radio signal. It's actually just a coil that's broadcasting it through frequencies right into your body. And so recently I went onto their site, their website, and I looked at the testimonies, and I've had a thyroid problem, a hyperthyroid problem for 2 years now. And there was a case history on there where the person had the same problem I had, hyperthyroid. And after using this, he was completely healed. And then there was another case of a guy with Lyme's, and was pretty much almost bedridden. And after only 3 months, he's free of Lyme's, just using this device. So I was extremely impressed with the case histories, and I'm extremely impressed with the technology. So I bought it. And one of the ways you decide which frequencies to use is you speak into a notepad that basically records your voice, and then by your voice signal, it can determine what's the most problematic in your body and what frequencies are best to start with. So it's an exciting device. Everybody with significant health challenge can be benefited because it not only can help send frequencies to tune up and improve organ health, balance them out, and they're applying Chinese medicine principles, which is that every organ is paired with another organ. So kidney with bladder, the small intestines with the heart, and so on and so forth. So they're going to send you frequencies to balance both of those systems, whatever system is weak in your body. And my case is thyroid, so I think it's going to be the thyroid and the adrenal. Send those frequencies to balance it, help it get back to normal, and or kill pathogens in the body. So it's a very cool device, and I now have it, so I'll keep you posted over the months as to the progress I make.
I'm really interested in hearing more about that, yes. And, you mentioned Lyme's disease. I don't know if many of us realize how debilitating Lyme's disease is. I know a gal very well who contracted Lyme's disease from a tick bite. She lives in the East Coast, near New York City. And when she first got Lyme's disease, she would get in her car to go shopping at the same supermarket she'd been to for years and years and years, just, a couple miles away. She'd get there and forget how to get home. She would fall down. Oh, yeah. Wow. She would fall down. She would get in her car and forget how to drive her car. Now, it's pretty simple, right? You put the key in the ignition. I'm talking, like 20 years ago. You put the key in the ignition, turn the engine to start. You start it, you step on the brake, you put it in reverse, you back out of your driveway. Well, that she couldn't remember how to do.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's pretty debilitating. So it's not to be taken lightly.
The medical or allopathic alternative is high dosages of antibiotics for like 1 year at a time, which is going to destroy your body. I mean, it not only kills the microorganisms that you need, the digestive tract, the beneficial bacteria, it also basically shuts down the mitochondria throughout the body, so you end up just completely being depleted of energy and possibly injuring organs. So, yes, this is a fantastic option that exists now that's safe on the body.
And I think that's where she is, because, yes, she did have one of those antibiotic pumps. She walked around with it for well over a year, as you're talking about, and I think now, 20 years later, she's suffering from the results of the antibiotics. We'll be right back. Stephen Hewer's with us. Stephen, I figured out the difference between you and other people who talk about health. And the difference is it happened to you. It happened to you, and you are absolutely determined not to let it take you down. And you're going to fix it, no matter what. So whatever studying, the length of study, the Dr. Norman Shealy says he's an experiential junkie. And what he means by that is he is willing to try on himself before he recommends it to others. And yeah. And that's what you do.
Yeah, I do that with most of my products, Yeah, so, it's just one of those, it's like a life sentence, so to speak. It's like, I had a really fun childhood from, childhood on to age 10 or 11. And then, I got hit hard when my teens, with this mercury thing. So from that point on, I had to become kind of serious and figure things out.
Mm-hmm. CBD oil, cannabis oil. Some people might think we're talking about marijuana. We're not. Please tell us your thoughts on CBD oil.
Okay, so let's just ask a simple question. If an average American has a headache, how do they address it?
Well, they simply kill the messenger, right? They take an aspirin.
They take an aspirin, exactly. So aspirin will stop your body's ability to manufacture red blood cells. It also makes your blood super thin and you're subject to bleeding too long. It also can cause ulcers in the stomach. It's obviously not a holistic method of dealing with a headache. So I have a dear friend that suffered from migraines ever since she's been going through menopause. And I sent her a particular CBD product that I was introduced to recently, and it totally erased it. And all of her arthritis pain in her neck went away too. So I became very excited about this product. And for starters, there's 2 different plants on this planet that have been demonized. One's called hemp, the other one's called cannabis. And cannabis is the one that will produce the high amounts of THC, the psychoactive property, after you heat that particular resin or oil inside of that plant. You'll convert the THCA, which is a non-psychoactive, into THC, the psychoactive chemical. And then there's hemp, which has super low levels of THC and is typically used to grow for fiber purposes. And hemp was used all the way back, in the founding of the country, because you had to have hemp to create canvases for sails for ships. You had to have it for the covered wagons. You had to have it for ropes and ships and things. So it was like a law that you had to grow it at one point in time, just because fiber was so important to the economy and the functioning of the colonists. So it's been around a long time, and it's a super valuable, for the economy. It's such a wonderful thing for paper and stuff. And we know that Randolph Hearst, the big owner of newspaper, and also many acres of forests being grown for paper purposes. So this was back in the 30s or so, I think it was, or earlier. And he ended up basically paying people to demonize, the government and such, to demonize cannabis and hemp because he saw that if it was allowed for this hemp to be legal and grown on many different farms, it would wipe out the need for a forest for paper purposes. You could leave the forest intact because this is a superior form of fiber for paper, as well as it makes the best form of Levi's. I mean, your Levi's, if you make them from hemp, they'll last 100 years compared to the cotton Levi's that we wear today. So the medicinal properties of cannabis and hemp, but hemp in this case, because hemp is legal. I mean, there's a farm bill that's been passed that basically makes it legal to grow hemp for fiber purposes or for the medicinal purposes. And so the properties within the hemp and cannabis plant, in this case we're talking about hemp, is they have what's called cannabinoids and also terpenes. And back not too long ago, it was discovered, I think it was the 90s or 2000, that our bodies function on our own cannabinoids. We have what's called CB1 and CB2 receptors, and the body, when it's healthy, is producing generous amounts of what's called anandamide and 2-AG. These are the 2 different chemicals our body will produce as our own cannabinoids that will lock onto the CB1 or CB2 receptor and basically instruct that cell or tissue to do its function, whether that's producing antibodies or whether that's producing proteins or enzymes or hormones or detoxification chemicals. There's all these instruction signals that come from these cannabinoids. But in our modern day and age, due to toxicity and stress, you end up, like with all things that keep your body young, your production will become lower to the point that it's no longer keeping you balanced and keeping you harmonious. So you can actually now take hemp-derived CBDs with the terpenes, both as a pill, a gummy bear, or a gummy whatever, and then also as drops, and then get the therapeutic dosage of the cannabinoids that you're missing and the terpenes. And then these cannabinoids and terpenes have this, a broad spectrum effect. Not only do they lock onto the CB1 and CB2 receptors in the body and then send those signals to the tissues so that the tissues are producing all the appropriate chemicals and keeping the body in homeostasis, but they also have the ability to, alleviate symptoms. I mean, pain is one of them. So it's a very well-known fact that you can take CBDs, and again, they work better with terpenes, and get this pain alleviation effect. Or if you have nerve pain, it can alleviate that, or migraine headaches, or kill tumor cells, or stop spasms. I had a naturopathic doctor girlfriend many years ago who had multiple sclerosis, and so she'd be having these involuntary spasms, and she'd just be so depressed, no appetite, in this crunched up, painful position, and she was on codeine to alleviate that, which is a total toxin to your liver, and it shuts down your appetite because your liver's preoccupied with trying to get rid of this poison. So I said, why don't you get some cannabis, because I've heard that will alleviate that. So she did, and sure enough, I mean, her pain went away, her muscle spasms went away, her appetite came back, her mood came back up. So there's tremendous therapeutic effects to hemp and the CBDs and terpenes, and that's just one example of how powerful a non-toxic way you can help somebody with multiple sclerosis. It's also been able to help people induce sleep and also alleviate anxiety. And also you could take different ones to promote either appetite or to suppress appetite, whichever you need. There's different terpenes that do different functions in that area. So the other thing about this is that having had this hyperthyroid problem now for 2 years, I was told that I should be trying CBDs, that they might help. So I bought this brand and tried it and didn't really notice much. And then I tried another brand and didn't really notice much. And then I tried another brand and didn't notice much. I tried about 6 different brands and got no results or even a negative result, because some of the CBDs can be psychoactive. So if you take a high concentration of the oil that's just CBD, you can get a psychoactive effect. And it wasn't pleasant. I don't like that, So then I was introduced to one where the guy said that it's different because it has terpenes in it. So I started studying the subject, and I learned that terpenes are in all plants, and it's what gives the plant the ability to have its smell or its aroma. There's the pine smell. There's the smell of the rose. There's the smell of all the different essential oils. There's the citrus smell. These are all chemicals called terpenes that literally just waft off of that fruit, vegetable, herb, whatever it is, in 85-degree temperature or higher. And this becomes the smell, but it's also a chemical that's therapeutic to the body. And so I learned that if you want to benefit from CBDs, you want to have a product that's gone through the steps to ensure that the terpenes that are in the hemp plant are extracted and preserved and in the formula with the CBD. And that's not what everybody does. Everybody processes their CBD product with usually alcohol, which is a solvent, and heat, which then ends up destroying most or all of the terpenes. So they have maybe 10 terpenes. There's like over 200 different terpenes that have been identified. And there's 35 to 40 that really do the heavy lifting, actually have a therapeutic effect in the body. So I basically took this product that's been processed this way, or before I get there, I'll just say that the company that took the time to develop this strain, it took like 7 years to cultivate and hybridize and finally come up with a strain that has this broad terpene spectrum and a high concentration of it. And then they have a process of extracting it where they preserve all those terpenes, and there's 40 of these terpenes in this particular formula, and the most therapeutic ones, and then plus the CBDs. So I was introduced to this, I took some, and all of a sudden I was sleeping. I haven't slept really hardly at all for a number of years with the heart racing too much at night because of the thyroid hormone being too high. So this was the first thing I'd ever taken, because I've taken plenty of melatonin, plenty of tryptophan, plenty of 5-HTP, plenty of valerian and hops and all kinds of stuff, and none of them would touch my sleep problem. And this thing did. And there was one night where I took 10 of these 10-milligram gummy bears, and I slept 8 hours. And that hasn't happened since, I was in my 30s or something, So this product got my attention. I decided to carry it because how many people suffer from some form of chronic pain or headaches or something that this type of herbal intervention can alleviate, because it's basically working directly with your own cannabinoid system. So there's this line of CBDs is called the Agora CBDs, and they're the only ones on the market that I know of that are grown this way and produced this way, so they have the high terpene content.
Stephen, I'm listening fast to everything you're saying. It's fascinating. And so here's what comes to mind. You mentioned arthritis of the neck. Does it alleviate the pain and make more limber of the fingers as well? Arthritis of the fingers?
I haven't got a testimony on that. My thinking is that it would, but I don't have a testimony on that to verify that. But is the arthritis of the fingers, is it osteo, just inflammation, or osteo, I'm sorry, osteo is just inflammation, And then osteo is the destruction of the cartilage, and then rheumatoid is the just inflammation. Do you know which one it is for the person?
No, I do not.
Okay.
But I'm sure there are a lot of farmers who can't turn their necks completely as they used to. And,
oh yeah.
I'm sure that that's something worth telling them about. And also, what about Parkinson's? Will the Agora CBD help with someone who has Parkinson's? Because we have an instructor who has Parkinson's.
I'll tell you that on the other side. Break.
Yeah. Okay, we'll be right back. So, Stephen, back in the 1970s when I attended the university, I went to my first chemistry lab, and they had these tables with the sink in the middle, and there were two stools there, and I just picked an empty table, put my books down, and I went to get my glassware, the flasks, the test tubes, and so forth. I came back, and there was the prettiest girl in the entire lab, and there were a couple hundred people in this lab sitting next to me. I couldn't believe it. Absolutely stunned. Well, that gal, Marty Barrett, is one of our instructors, and we have stayed in touch for all the years since spending 4 years at the university together, and as friends. And we've stayed friends, and our family, and we know each other, and our spouses know each other, and it's been a wonderful friendship. And she has come down with Parkinson's. And
oh, wow.
She was telling me about it, and she even mentioned it on the air with Norm Shealy. So I'm not telling any secrets out of class. And if you can help her, that'd be wonderful, and I will pass that information. She teaches biology at the college level.
Wow,
so
cool.
She's in a wheelchair.
I think I can help her because I've had Synergy 1 can help the brain heal, and the CBD can help reduce the symptoms. It's like, they've done studies and they've now mapped the biochemical pathway and how CBD interacts to produce more dopamine, so that's the controlling chemical for reducing the symptoms of Parkinson's. So it's been studied, and it does help reduce the symptoms, and it may actually slow the rate of the deterioration. But to actually heal the nervous system, the substantia nigra area, to produce the dopamine, I've got the Synergy 1 and the Medex products from Russia. The Medex products from Russia they're regulatory peptides derived from plants that activate the adult stem cells within the given tissue, in this case the central nervous system, to convert the already existing adult stem cells in the tissues to brand new brain cells or tissues in question. So I'd get her on a couple of things, and I'd also make sure that we get the mercury out of her body if she has any from fillings earlier in her life, because mercury can damage parts of the brain to cause Parkinson's or cause Alzheimer's.
Okay. Well, she has Parkinson's. Mm-hmm.
I know. I'm just saying that mercury coming off the teeth earlier in life can deposit in the brain and actually end up causing enough brain destruction to cause either Alzheimer's or Parkinson's. Yeah.
Okay. Well, she teaches biology, so I'm going to suggest that she call you. Is that okay with you?
That'd be great. Yeah, I'd love to talk to her.
Okay. And she'll be able to talk to you at probably a pretty sophisticated level because she does teach college biology. She teaches those who are going to become nurses, and she's really tough because if they don't know the material, they don't pass her class. So she is protecting us from people who might otherwise kill us as nurses.
Right. That's good.
So I'm really excited about CBD oil. Now, Stephen, do you want me to take your CBD oil? If so, would you send me some and send me an invoice, and I will send you a check?
Yes, I'd be happy to send you some and let you give get an experience down and share it with us. It's a powerful product. I didn't even mention all the things that it can do. I mean, it's a mood enhancer, antibacterial, anticarcinogenic, dissolves gallstones. Different limonene do that. Helps with gastrointestinal complications. One of the limonene compounds, it's hard to pronounce, I can't pronounce it. It's helpful in lowering cholesterol levels. I mean, there's just a bazillion things these compounds have been studied to do that are all beneficial for human health. Yeah. I just
looked up growing hemp in Missouri, and it's allowed. It's legal to do it according to the other team. So should I be growing hemp, Stephen Heuer?
you should definitely be growing hemp, and you should do it on a commercial level so you could sell it for whatever, fiber purposes or, the medicinal production of CBD with terpenes. There's different things you could be selling it for. Even the hemp seeds you can sell because people press them into the oil that people take that's got, the omega-3, 6, and 9 in it. So it's like a complete oil for the body.
I'm going to be spending some time in the truck with our son today, and and he's a farmer, and we're going to be talking about growing hemp. And I think he's going to say, "Are you serious, Dad?" Yeah, I'm serious. Stephen Heuer, thank you so much for being with us, class. If you'd like his number, 888-988-3325. 888-988-3325. SGN80.com. SGN80.com for Stephen Heuer, my dear friend. Thank you so much for being with us.